So, welcome to today's session. And we're going to talk about how do we turn strategy into results, and how can L&D, or how can leadership, learning development, how can that help? My name is Roberto Dal Corso. I'm going to be this host of the interactive session next 60, 90 minutes. And I am speaking to you from my home office here in Zurich, Switzerland. So, I know you're all Zoomy experts by now because over the last year, but I see that a lot of you guys can work it. If you can't work it, please, we're going to utilize the chat box. We're going to utilize the Q&A, raise your hands. Any of those wonderful things will absolutely, will absolutely work. As also, as I said, you can customize the viewer, the speaker, so that you get to see that. And, I would also love that, we've had some practice. Some people have typed in where they're connecting from, and it's absolutely great. So at least we all know that the chat works. And, that's one of the ways we try and make it, more interactive, is by utilizing some of these features. So jumping into it, what I really want to talk about today is, I want to talk about three things, and they all really build on top of each other. And the first one is the leadership profit chain, and I'm going to share some information, where that comes from, and, how that is impacting the bottom line, and how it impacts results. And also then, secondly, I'd like to talk about some learning journeys, and this is something brand new, but it's been tried, it's been tested, it's true. And, the last one is, is really measuring the impact and, an ROI on learning and leadership development, and I'm going to share with you, something that you might already have heard me say at different times over the years, because absolutely measurement is key. Measurement can be tricky, but we need to get it right. And I'm going to show you how we've been able to measure it as well as use it. So again, any questions, stop in, jump, drop them into the Q&A. I will certainly be checking in on those as we go along. So I'm actually going to close that window, so I've got that up all the time. So let's jump in, to the first one, and that's really the leadership profit chain, and to give you some background to the leadership profit chain, it's not something I've developed. I take no credit for it, but it was done by a gentleman by the name of Scott Blanchard. Now, I got to know Scott a couple of years ago, and he was telling me about this leadership profit chain, and I absolutely loved the concept. And Scott is the president of the Ken Blanchard companies in the US, one of my partners. And this was probably 22 or 23 years ago. So it's not a new concept, being developed, but not new. So Scott was, working and doing a lot of work with a major retail company in the US. And as they were working together, they'd been doing things for a couple of years. He felt that they were making a real difference. And one day to the next, not unknown, corporate companies, well, guess what? The CFO and the entire leadership and management in terms of leadership development and learning, pretty much they let go. Overnight, they let go. So all of the work that Scott was doing suddenly comes to a stop. And, Scott thinks to himself, wow, that's really a pity, because, in his mind, that's really stupid. He says, why would you stop doing something that is making such a major difference in the organizations? And, as Scott then went on to tell me the story, not surprisingly, that company doesn't exist in the States anymore. It's no longer in business. So that was just something interesting in there. But, when you look at it, the cause, what really caused Scott to think about it, he said, like, how can smart leaders really sometimes do things that maybe don't seem so smart, and do it so suddenly. And, on the other hand, they're doing things that can make an incredibly positive impact on organizations as well as the bottom line. And I'm going to take you through this model. It looks very complicated, but it's pretty simple. And it was at that point that Scott decided to go and study some companies that either were investing in training and development, and look if he could see a correlation between companies that were achieving absolutely great results on the one hand, profit, adding value, and compare those to organizations which maybe had made some investment, but for whatever reason weren't getting the value, or, didn't get what they were looking for. So, it's at that point that Scott went back to one of the founders of the Blanchard organization. And, this gentleman's a research guru by the name of uh, Dita Exerigami. And, so he basically laid out the project, and he said to me, he says, I need to find a way that, one, I can understand, but also I can explain and present to senior executives of how to show them, and not only show them why leadership development is important, but how it also works. What is the impact that it has on the organization, and, the effectiveness of training and the effects that it has on, the leadership inside with the organization. And what he found was that, top leaders, often get inspired by getting great values, by having great people supporting them. On the other hand, you've got some dysfunctional teams which often kind of get in the way of their own strategies, and I'm sure you've all seen companies where you got leaders that you can go like, yeah, if only some of the people could get out of the way, they would do such a better job in it. And that's all around us, and it was at that point, where they did the research, and the research really centered around one question. And, as all research, if you do it right, you start off with a hypothesis. And the hypothesis was, great leadership inside of an organization, what great environment is that creating? And, and what spillover effect does that have on creating a much higher level of customer satisfaction, which then is going to drive economic values as well as results inside and outside of the business. And that was really the hypothesis. So it may sound simple, but what Scott was trying to do was, basically come up with an idea, come up with a way to present it both factually, because, that's what it's about. It's about the research, but also in a way to convince and show senior executives, or, a couple of the members of the senior executive team that might not, believe in, learning and development or leadership as fundamental and central to an organization, as well as the success. So, on that, they then went out and did a study, and they looked at about 250 case studies. Similar case studies had been done in and around at the time, looking at areas of customer service, employee success, organizational satisfaction. And this took about 6 months. And, what they saw was, and here's really the central idea. There are two types of leadership that occur in every organization. And that's where you can see right at the center of the model, the center of the circle. The first one is strategic leadership, and strategic leadership is really made up of two things. First, it's a set of messages that includes the vision, the culture, which is often articulated into the values that an organization has, or that it desires to have, the culture to have. Then second, it's also a strategic imperatives, a set of strategic imperatives. What I mean by that is, it's those priorities that might change every 1, 2, or 3 years, but they are strategic. They are the ones that are moving the organization, towards where the vision is going. It's where we want to be heading in that direction. So it's the strategic imperatives in there. It's when you think about it, it can also be the health, the trajectory of an organization. It's how do we go about engaging in strategic leadership? And, I know that by the end of this session, you're going to jump back into all of those things that because you're on the session and you're going, oh, I got my long to-do list. I've got to get these calls done. And when we're done, you're going to jump straight back into it. But, right now, here is an opportunity to, in this context, is to play a role of strategic leadership for your organization by, thinking about the vision, the values, strategic imperatives that, you're engaged with, that, are going to help, you drive and support the organization. So, when you look at that gray half circle there, so strategic leadership is really, that's a set of messages, but also a context to it. Below it, when you look in the green, you've got the operational leadership. Now, this is what people tend to do on a daily basis in their job. And this is where, it's happening. And this is where, we will get off session and we'll start digging into, you're going to look at your emails or your unanswered messages, or, as I said, the to-do list that you've got to jump back into. you're involved in operational leadership, and what the research shows is that strategic leadership and operational leadership are different, and the research also shows that they are both very connected. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the three things on this slide, and I'll go through them, from top to bottom, and around the circle in that. And the first one really is that organizational vitality. Now, organizational vitality, that's the idea where organizations are primarily judged around their financials, their successes, their financial stability. And today I believe that organizations uh, talk about the quad bottom line. And if you've never heard of that, the quad bottom line is made up of what I call four things. One certainly, is going to be financial success or the financial strength of an organization. The second one is customer engagement, or net promoter score that you might be using, or any other KPIs that you use internally to measure your customers' satisfaction, your customers' trust, and also within the organization, and that they might be dealing with. The third one, or the third part of that, is really is also around the employee reputation, or and to what degree is an organization uh, what for the employees is the employer of choice. And I mean, your company, whether you look at it or not, has an employment brand, and it's that degree to which people come to you, or and it's their opinion about the company that they have, or they might not have. The last one is how your organization is seen as a steward and contributor to, positively, both to society, to the local community, and more globally, at a higher level. When you think of things like sustainability within an organization or within an industry. So, when you think about it, again, organizational vitality up at the top of the slide, organizational vitality, employee work passion, that is a combination of both hard and soft measures, both for employees, as success, but as well as engagement. And, when you look at the left and the right-hand sides, it's about customer, should I say left-hand side, it's about customer devotion, which is really the function of those things, customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, customer advocacy, customer satisfaction. And, uh, well, when you think of satisfaction, I mean, well, what's one of the common ones that everyone thinks? And I know we haven't been traveling, but an easy one to judge for me is like, well, I've just gotten off a plane. How was that flight? You know, or I just took a meal and I've had a meal, and how was that experience of having the meal? Or maybe today we have meals delivered to our house, which is probably more appropriate. But it's that sort of thing that talks about customer satisfaction in itself. And well, going back to the same organization, what is driving people back to that organization? Whether it's looking, I got to look for a meal for Friday night for my family. Who am I going to go running to, or am I going to run away and go screaming somewhere else? And the last part of that is customer advocacy in there, which is really, to what degree do I feel positively or negatively impacted by and about that organization that I happen to be dealing with. So these are some of the components, and I think they're really important because these components are so directly related to learning and development, related to actually making your strategy work. And I say you can always have the smartest people in the room, but if you can't get to their smartest and their best thinking, then you don't really have the smartest people there. So the best skills in a way work, but what do we have to do to make them work? You have to, you have the things uh, that work, and you have the things that don't work. So again, when you look at it from strategic and operational leadership, very much connected. Strategic leadership has only, an indirect influence on the organizational vitality in there of the organization. But strategic leadership, gains its value because of the vision, the culture, the values, as they cascade those down, positively affecting the operational leadership in the organization. So that's a very, very powerful connection in there. And again, because that's going to impact the strategy, is going to impact the work, passion as well as customer devotion. So, what we have found is, and this is important, and, if you want to write this down, write this down, that operational leadership is the critical point. So operational leadership is the critical point. That's the kingpin, it's the kingpin of the success in every organization, because, it directly impacts both on the quality or the lack of quality. Can be negative experiences on employee quality, can be also negative experiences from the customer perspective. So this reason, it's so important, especially on customer experiences. And, if you think about it, your managers are the ones that are putting policies and procedures into place and have the systems in place, and at the end of the day, they're the ones that usually land up having to speak to a customer when things are not going quite as well, or, when customer questions arise and they land up getting escalated up, they land up coming to the end point of operational leadership. And, this is really, really a big thing. So, when you look at it, not all of these arrows on the graph are statistically related, but operational leadership really is that critical pivot point, that employee, that's that employee work passion that you see has an incredibly strong impact on the organization, both, outwards to the right-hand side, to the vitality, the economic value that a company creates, the economic strength, plus, the employee opinion and the opinion of employees in the work, in doing their work, as well as, swinging it to the other side, customer devotion. And customer devotion, again, incredibly strong impact on organizational vitality, because, one fact that is very true, and this is, 100% of your revenue, 100% of your sales, guess what, come from your customers. Customers have the choices. Customers can really be happy. And, when customers are happy, they tend to be, let's say, less price resistance. They become more loyal. They tend to serve your organization as a marketing machine, and again, it's the old adage, if you've had a great meal, you've had a great experience, you're going to go out and tell people about it and share it with them. So it's that kind of thing, they become part of your machine. And that doesn't say that over time, obviously price sensitivity, it helps reduce that. And again, you're going to still get, cranky or difficult customers, but, at the end of the day, if customers are unhappy with your service, with your organization, and even worse, you might be in the situation where you go, well, I got a captive product, so where else are they going to go? That's even worse, because if customers are unhappy and they can't walk away from you, and they have to stay, that's when real trouble starts, because, that's when they start to sour your reputation on the internet. And it's so evident, and it's so easy, and it's so important that, operational leadership has a direct impact on, employee work passion as well as customer devotion on the other hand. And those two things really drive an incredible amount of economic value up at the top. And the last piece is that, employees and customer connections, guess what? Employees and customers tend to talk to each other, they interact. And that, again, is an incredibly strong relationship that happens between, employee work passion and customer devotion. And, and that's, a lot of us don't fully understand that we might not even be measuring that. So, when you look at the leadership profit chain, it really matters, because, what we're trying to do is, in effect, the quality of our operational leadership at the bottom. The operational leadership, as I said, is the critical point in it. It's that pivot point that makes things happen. And now let me tell you something about operational leadership, that if we are not clearly, let's say, positively working towards improving and to sustain any improvements that we make over time, that within the operational leadership side, if we're not working, towards it, well, then unfortunately the net result is operational leadership then tends to stand still. And if you're not investing and driving forwards, well, then you're not getting better. And if you're not getting better, it's getting worse. It's not one of those things that stands still. I mean, how many of you exercise and do fitness? And if you've ever done any sort of fitness, then either you're actively working on it and you're getting better, or if you're not, your fitness tends to decrease. It's not something that, well, I've exercised one and my fitness level stays the same for the rest. And, that's exactly the same. You'll tend to lose it. So operational leadership is exactly the same. And, it's not something that naturally causes people to come together. It's not something that, people tend to talk about. And, let's discuss the real issues to realize, to be able to explain, to understand them. So, the pivot point that operational leadership is there, and a lot of people say, well, okay, so why is it so hard at times to get resources, to get funds for training, to get, the development for operational leadership for executives, for CEOs, or, because, think of it in your own organizations. We're happy as organizations to spend tens, hundreds, thousands on, potentially external consultants, different types of market research. And in many ways, we have to fight for every euro to spend on training. So, this is why I believe the leadership profit chain can really, really help us to see that difference in there. And I know I've been talking for a lot. So if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat box. I know I shared a lot, but later on, I'll give everyone an option that, where I'm happy to share the white paper, the research behind that. But I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a second. But, so what we have found over time is the most valuable activities we have seen is when, the leadership team is aligned around the importance of operational leadership and the importance of strategic leadership. Because again, they create that combination. They create the culture that is actively worked towards on a day-to-day basis. We move towards developing and improving our leadership capacity. And, most of you have probably heard of, one of my favorite guys is Peter Drucker. I mean, I learned about him many, many years ago in one of my first uh, marketing, one of my first marketing textbooks, was from Peter Drucker. And, one of the things that I will never forget, he talks about, one thing that, doesn't naturally happen in organizations, is often the creation of fear, the frustrations, inefficiencies, the friction, the political mayhem that we can have, within our organizations. And when possible, these things happen. It's generally because there is, a lack of a vision or a strategy, something that, brings everything together, make it good, make it a plan, so that we have the discipline to stick to that plan. And it's the old saying of, if you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. Now, it may sound simplistic, but that's really what Peter was trying to say. So with that, that's why we've gone out and created these learning journeys that work. And you're probably asking, well, what is a learning journey? And I see the names that are on the call, and I know some of you, I won't mention names, I won't mention anything. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be launching one of these learning journeys. So it's going to be interesting for you. You're just going to get a high level overview and how it all fits together. But, with the learning journeys we're going to launch tomorrow and over the coming weeks, you guys are going to love it. So absolutely, as I said, won't mention any names, but I'm super excited to kick that one off tomorrow. So what exactly is a learning journey? A learning journey is really something that, again, as I said, the Blanchard organization have been playing with and really have perfected over the last 20 years around the world, and it's really a leadership journey. It's a journey that has been designed and has the plan. So it is designed to create leaders that are more prepared, both from a mindset, a skill set side, in their jobs and under pressure with the people they're working. And it could be internal and external people in there, so it could be one of three things if you look at it as a learning journey. It could be a program, or it could be an experience. Generally, there's always pre-work involved, and this is where you learn and then you start to practice. And it also has things that happen after, like coaching, random acts of digital content and different follow-ups. And it's a program that tends to unfold over time. It's a series of experiences. And as I said, it may be programs, it may be interventions, but it's a curriculum that's made up, with the learner in mind, and it gives the learner knowledge, skills on multiple topics. It's really a series of experiences over time, rather than, hey, yeah, who wants to be a great leader? Let's invite them to a 1 or a 2 day class. It's going to cost us, X amount. This sort of days out of the office, or today out of your virtual office. And yeah, guess what? By the time you get back to, into the real world, you'll have gotten, I don't know, 400 emails over those 2 days that you'll have missed on, that you got to catch up with, and we think that those 2 days are going to make a permanent, profound difference in your life. Really? 2 days can certainly get you a good start, but it's not a series of experiences. It's not, on the one end, when you've got experiences, what do you do with it? It's going to impact your career. You're going to become a leader. It's a journey that unfolds over your complete career. So, the first step for an individual contributor, an individual to become a leader, and then, what do they need to do from leading on, because you start to lead yourself, you then become a leader, you then lead others, who's promoted, and quite often, I mean, I don't know, I've seen it, you might have seen it within your own organizations, and a typical example, I worked for a manufacturing company, automotive aftermarket, but we manufactured axles and braking systems. Quite often you would see someone like a fantastic engineer, really good engineer, suddenly get promoted. Not a very good manager. Why not? He was a fantastic engineer, but a fantastic engineer does not make a fantastic manager or leader. And it's because, we assume that, well, he's great in one thing, so he's great in everything, and off he went. And very seldom did we actually train them in anything. But a leader also, as you get to the next step and over time, as you go up the ladder, and the components are different and there's different requirements, but there's always new sets of skills, a new different mindset that people need. And what happens is, people progress up a level. So, in this case, the engineer, he'll get to a certain level, and then suddenly he doesn't seem to be successful anymore. And that's the reason why you always hit that glass ceiling of the success in there, unless you're continuously developing your skills. So, what makes learning journeys work, and what they are, the thing about learning journeys, which I think is really cool, and that's why I'm excited, that over the years, as technology has evolved, it's been designed, especially in this field, and it's really, really starting to help. So the first thing at learning journeys, need to start with the people, who is going to be going through this learning journey. It always starts off with the who in this case. Who is the audience? And, it always ends with the who, the end user. And it's always, we're always looking at it from a perspective of thinking about what do they need? What do they need to be thinking? What do they need to feel? What do they need to learn? And, you think beyond an event, a one-time event. How can you continually drive better change, create new habits? Because that's what really becomes sustainable. I mean, they talk about it takes 21 days to create a new habit, or you probably heard that, or something similar. But it's not like, well, I do it once and I've suddenly got a new habit. So, you've got to design an experience over time. And, you also think about a group of people, you think about them over a period of time. And again, it ends with outcomes, because if we don't have outcomes, well, then it's really hard to show evidence. It's really hard to convince anyone that these learning journeys really work, and that, we actually know what we're doing when we take people on these learning journeys. So that's from, that perspective. And just very, very quickly, I just want to do, jumping on that slide. Yeah, jumping on to the next one. I kind of lost my slides in the moment there. Just want to go back a second. No, I did lose my slide. Just lost my place. I do apologize. You can see it's not a recorded session. I lost my own space. Happens to everyone. So, as I said, it starts with the who. So let's talk about, the who in this perspective. And it is in learning journey. So when you look at this slide, we use a concept called design thinking. A lot of you are familiar with it, but it's design thinking as applied specifically to creating leadership journeys. We have two types of learning journeys. There are some which can be more general across industries, and others that can be more specific, more tailor-made. So for example, if you think of individual companies where you've got your own curriculums, your own learning and development already in place, it can be combined. But where it starts is we start with a scenario where you have a defined leader, a defined person, and we need to create a learning journey for them. And we can do, 1, 2, 3, or 4 specific things. They've got some skills and they do them really well. So we have to start at learning about the who, because that's who we're talking to. We then have to define a point of view. We look at specific problem statements. We look at what we are trying to make happen. We then brainstorm, create solutions, and create a minimal viable product. And you've probably heard of that concept too. It's the smart way of doing things. We then go and build the solution out. We then test it with the users, the learners, focus groups, just to make sure if we're getting it right. And naturally, that's going to evolve over time. So what you'll end up getting, is a program that is built, created, that really hits the needs of the people. And that's the important part of this. And, in this, it's you can see a picture of a brain, but it's really a concept about looking at their goals, their desires, their constraints. So, how we go about looking at it, and again, as I said, it's a picture of a brain, but we look at the goal. The goal is really, coming from any goals you have come from your prefrontal cortex part of the brain. The desires, on the other hand, it's much more deeper rooted inside the brain, but that's where also the constraints that we have sit. And again, challenging assumed constraints, one of the things that often come up, because, I think it was Henry Ford who said, if you believe you can do something or you believe you can't, you're right. You get to choose, but you're right. Either way, no one's going to tell you different. It's really about, what are my constraints? What are my concerns? And that, as I said, sits in the limbic system in the brain. So what we are trying to create overall is different personas, and, just a couple of ideas of what we've gone and done. So different personas to help each one understand, their specifics. So yeah, here's an example of one of the personas we've met, and this is Sasha. She's 25 years old. She's a store manager, gets paid, hourly. And, this is one of the dynamics of where managers are, and can be today. She's one of those that tends to be exempt as a full-time employee. She's not one of the FTEs, as we used to say. She's a temporary headcount. And naturally, because of temporary headcounts, well, they also have different times, different overtimes. How they get managed, again, totally different. So, you can see that, her role, she requires multitasking, moving quickly, managing conflict demands. And you can read in the middle of that slide that she's attempting to create a team that, is, having fun with each other, with the customer, but also staying absolutely customer focused and creating a top service. And obviously, her role is very active. She's, a store manager. She's on her feet. And what we know about Sasha is, we've been able to identify her, from her disc profile. A lot of companies work with disc profiles. We're able to bring that in, and again, we can bring that in, and we can see that, through a series of interviews, questionnaires, we're able to identify that Sasha has 4 goals. Number one, she's trying to create, as I said, this positive force for her employees, and obviously ensure a work-life balance. So in some ways, she's trying to be innovative and improve customer experience. She's building the credibility of herself as she progresses up the ladder in the company. And again, as we said, this is a frontline employee. Potentially it's her first time being a manager, who's trying to do a really complicated job. Most of the time, she's running around as a store manager, and she's trying to build her credibility down to, how does she identify? What we've been able to identify is at the bottom there, you can see some of her preferred learning methods. So, what we do know from these leadership journeys, we focus in on the person. We look at the representation of the audience. We look at the learner, and, we look at how we're going to take them through this journey. So that is, that it becomes engaging, active, and good for them. And his example here is just, one persona, which happens to be Sasha. Another one I want you to meet, I think this one's a Lucas. Yeah, meet Lucas. Now, Lucas is a new supervisor with a totally different organization. He happens to be, let's say, more analytical, maybe a little bit more nervous. You can see his disc profile is a high C. So Lucas's goals are very different, but his goals are, I want to be a great job. I want to be better at understanding all the changes at my organization where I work. I want to build a strong network across the organization, and I also want to establish new processes to improve efficiency. So Lucas, as you can see, is completely different from Sasha. But you can see below that, when you look at his preferred learning methods, he's very much into coaching, which will be really helpful for him at a later stage. He likes interactive classrooms. So, which again, we can add by including exciting video content and peer networking. So, what we've done is we've looked at the differences between Sasha and Lucas essentially in that respect. And just a quick third example, and then this one's Mark. And as we say, Mark's an experienced leader. Now you can see that, this kind of goes up the tier, if we can call it, within the organization, from a frontline employee, first-time manager, manager who's been doing it for a while, all the way to experienced people within the organization. So Mark is an experienced leader, where Sasha was frontline. Lucas was somewhere in the middle. Now, and again, Mark's story is different, of an experienced leader. He's been working, he's been leading for a while. He's got the scars, he's got the bruises, he's tried things. Some have worked, some haven't worked. No, he's got some wrinkles that go with it, like myself. But he has needs, and he wants to be known as a fair manager, and he wants to make sure that everyone is aligned. As he's at the top of the organization, that everything, it cascades down, the goals, the strategies, everyone's aligned. So, he needs strategic leadership skills, and obviously a better understanding of the changes at the company, and how about coaching his organization, coaching his people. So his agenda can help his managers, and that will work for him because it'll make him a better person, but it's also going to make the people that work for him better and help them accomplish, what they collectively are working towards. So, the basis, just a quick example, these are three different personas, and what we are able to do with those different personas is we start to create leadership journeys, leadership journeys that really matter, if I can put it that way, because they make an impact on each group, using different tools available, so that, what we are able to do is create a common language. We give people the chance to do self-assessments against the common language. We're also able to, make the content personalized. We target them, we can engage them, we can pull content to people. The push content, I think is really cool, because, what you get, you can engage participants to share their experiences, interact with each other, and you can create a lot more of dynamics in there, and when you look at collection, collaboration, it's also what is real. And I say what is real because, when you get people together and they're learning very powerful concepts in, a spaced out sequence, we give them an opportunity to talk. And what happens over time is, short bits, shaped sizes, regular intervals, people, talk about how they can make this really work for them. And what we're able to do is also give them time, opportunities for people also to just reflect, because how often, and, I ask you a question, and I know I've been talking so much, so by all means, drop it into the chat box. How often, or do you even make time for yourself to reflect? Do you do it once a day? Do you do it once a week? Do you do it twice a day? I try reflect in the morning, and I try reflect in the evening, and I reflect on all wonderful things of, how the day went, what could have gone better, what could I've done differently. In the morning one, it's more like, what am I committed to making happen today? Why am I committed to making that happen? How's it going to make me feel in that respect? So, by all means, if you make time for yourself to reflect, just drop that into the chat box. But what we do is we also allow time for the participants of these learning journeys to reflect on the information, because we find that's really important, so as they reflect, and it's also how do we go about keeping people informed? And when I say people informed, it could be, quite often you might land up going to I don't know, you get called off to, you're in a lucky situation. Back in the old days, you get called off to go to a 1, 2, or 3 day workshop somewhere fantastic. Maybe it's like Paris or Rome or London. So off you go, you jump there, and as soon as you get back, someone might make the joke of, how was your holiday in, how was your weekend in Paris? Like, yeah, that's what you went there for, isn't it? They don't take it seriously in there. So, and that can be very, let's say, ineffective, because you come back, you've got new ideas, and the first person you bump to thinks it's a big joke. So immediately it certainly doesn't help. And what we found that, when you think about it, in this case, a lot more virtual trainings are going on. But what we've also found is virtual trainings are really great and can be very, very effective. And we found that, in over 20% of the cases, really good training creates a profound impact. And this is 1 day sessions we're talking about, not learning journeys. So in 20% of the 1 day, even virtual, can be very, very effective. But on the other hand, if you think of it, what really creates a profound impact on people versus just giving them an idea? And that's the big difference. So, when you think of it, these learning journeys can be anything from 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, 12 months long, but it's really about spreading it out over time, and people have the opportunity to learn new ideas, work on these ideas while, they're working in their own jobs, being able to reflect on it. And, then suddenly, next week we start to layer a different idea on top of that. And what we found is that people are learning more, and because they're learning it over time, with others around them, because it's spaced out in groups. So it's spreading it out. It also creates that opportunity where, as they are reporting, they report back and they go, yeah, there was great impact on this. And it helps them to understand the context of how to apply it in their jobs. Because quite often you go off to a session, and nowhere do they tell you how does this actually impact what you are doing on a day-to-day basis. Very, very important. So it works more effectively, these learning journeys, and it's also, believe it or not, more respectful of people's time in that sense. And just quickly, I do want to open up to a Q&A, but and I know, incredibly busy slide again. Unfortunately, I got lots of busy slides for you this month, but a busy slide, but with a great amount of detail. And if you have a quick look, if you look at creating a learning journey, it's really about creating a common language, that we said. It's targeting the people, letting the people do self-assessments, generating push-pull, building connections, giving opportunities to reflect, making it real. And, you don't have to make it real for them. You just have to give people an opportunity through, to create the dialogue, to make it real, to think about their lives for themselves. And I can tell you the amount of times we've spoken to people and taught, these leadership skills and capabilities. Now, what they tend to come back with and report, it's not just, oh, yeah, this helped, but, quite often they come back and they go, oh, my listening has changed, and changed at the dinner table with my family, my wife, and my kids. So it even works outside of the organization, because these skills can be used in any sort of communication, in any sort of role. So, keeping people informed. And this is, again, how do I keep my manager informed? How do I keep my peers informed? Because that's really part of the learning journey itself. And then we go, obviously, we collect data, we measure, so that we can talk more about it later, and lastly, make it more easier for them. And and then I just want to share a quick example of, it's a UX example done for a specific company. So this is what a learning journey might look like. And by the way of learning journey, that you can see, that they generally all done either inside, the BX learning platform, or can be used even on your own learning platform. They can be connected. So, many organizations obviously have their own platforms, like Intrepid or Read, and there's also so much work and development that's been done in any of these learning platforms. So it's really critical to be able to connect it, because you've probably got a lot of learning information, development trainings already on your organization. And it's just a matter of, connecting them. And why this matters is, when people learn what it matters, then it matters why they learn. So, learning leadership really matters in the job. It matters in the company, especially if you connect it back to the operational leadership, strategic leadership of the organization. That's where we talk about. That's what, we know how important it is, both, for internal and external customers, because, again, every one of us either has internal and external customers, but we want our customers to, we want to create that customer satisfaction, that loyalty, that advocacy, and it's only that way that we can connect the dots for the people through a learning journey. And, in this case, this learning journey happened to be a 12-month learning journey for a company called Acme in the US, and, we will have a look at that, and when you think about it, you can create 6 weeks learning journeys all the way through to 6 months, to a year learning journey. And as you space it out, the learning experience, certain things tend to happen in this. And this way you can see, they get, it gets rolled out within the organization. The first thing they're doing is looking at how do we lead within our own organization. They then go on to learning some self-leadership skills, and that learning journey continues. And, just a couple of quick slides of, what the BX platform looks like. And this is, what it really looks like when you're in the system. So, you start off and you can see, what your weekly content looks like. There's also extra resources, inspirations in there, but it's a week by week agenda. So, and one of the things that we tend to do is you can't get to week 6 before you've finished week 5, and you can't get to week 5 before you finish the week before that, because otherwise some of the overachievers just want to jump in and go do week 6, and we don't do it that way. So, and I've been through this program myself, and on a Sunday night, for example, we got the invitation, the content started the next day, and a few days, you start working through the content. And, when you think about it, the weekly content, it's broken out into modules. Usually it takes, probably an hour, and you get that done between Monday, Tuesday, or a Wednesday. It doesn't take a huge amount of time to get through it. And I'm just quickly flipping through some of the slides, some of the views on there. But then you can also see that, for example, here we get to, we're looking at week 2, you can see the agenda. So as this gets rolled out, you start spending time individually doing the e-learning. You're looking at the concepts, you're looking at the new content weekly. You've also got playlists for leadership that get added in there, interaction with your peers on a regular basis. And then obviously, we got some coaching that goes with it, with the facilitator. And, when we take people through them and we teach them, we reinforcing the content, we're getting them involved in the dialogue. We put people also again into small teams, and those sessions really cement the learning of the week. And when that one's done, we then move on to the next week. And the learning platform is the container for all of this and brings it all together in one place. And as I said, just a couple of examples of how it works, and a lot of fun. And in this case, you can see the resources that are involved in there. So not only it's a way to manage an experience, but it's also a way to do interactive sessions, as well as keep a record over time of who's done what and where are we with. So, one last example is, when you look at, as I said, 6-week learning journey in there and what happens over time. And, ideally, it's probably you're looking at, a 1 week, 6-week learning journey. It certainly over in a matter of 2 hours, you can get and replicate a 2-day workshop, but you're doing it over a 6 weeks, for example, instead of doing it over 2 weeks. And, what it does is allows people to really embed what they've learned over time together. And also it looks at them, what do I need to prepare for the following week? And, it looks ahead, looks behind, and we bring it together. And I understand it's full, and there's so much information. And, when you think about it, there was one, I think it was on week 2 of the session I was doing, and we were talking about goal setting. And I know all of us, if you're in a corporate environment, you've got goals. You've done goals for so many years. And here I was doing goal setting, and I've done several workshops on goal setting. And I think, because it was done over a week, it was a couple of days in, and I started to think, goal setting, yeah, I'm pretty good at it. I've done it for a while. But through the activities during the course of the week, I started to think about goal setting in different conversations, and suddenly what I realized about goal setting is that, quite often, I've been guilty of, with my own team, of not being crystal clear about goal setting, especially when it comes to, in goals that are in increments or, and that kind of made me go back and see, the lack of clarity that, I was creating for my own team in there. And when I thought about it for the first time, I went through many programs. It had been about a year ago, I'd been through, this one in a different format. But suddenly, because it was done over a period of time, it just got me to think differently. And I kind of doubled down and started to become far more clear on my goals. And that has helped me. So I've spent a lot more time now being obvious and clear about the goals. And I've noticed that the program worked really well. It was able to help me because I spent a whole week in one area versus otherwise I might just have thought about it, rolled on, moved on, and gone back to my to-do list the next day. So this is just some of the thoughts in there, and just continuing with the, what a learning journey can look like. Again, whether it's new leaders or experienced leaders, we start looking at different aspects of it in there. And again, we see the assessments in there, we reinforce it, we swing back the other way. We then, in this case, we're looking at, how do we go about building trust? We're looking at some of the SL2 concepts. And, where this is usually, you look at SL2, and that's kind of like, if you're doing it face-to-face, it's a 12-hour experience, and again, it's great, but we're able to break it over times. And then you jump into the next piece again, which then, again, coming from the Acme organization, is how do we interview and hire people? So again, you can, bring it into and layer into content that you've already got within the organization, skill sets, mindsets, ideas, and bring those together. Because, we got to create that connection between one thing and another when people are actually on trainings and how they work together in their job. So we bring those together in there, and so yeah, just quickly on that one, then we'll jump in. I want to open up to some Q&A because I'm super excited about it. So just the last quick example of this, you can see, on the left-hand side, as I said, 6-week learning journey. We look at there's different formats in there, different videos that we can add in there. There's podcasts in there. There might be some white papers, some articles that we go and ask people to read. And that's really about how do we build this roadmap in there to get them through these set learning journeys and experiences. And in the last picture, again, it's just, completing out the learning journey in there. And as I said, in this case, it lasted a year, but it's a specific journey that, as we said, we understand it from interviewing people. We understand it from, speaking to people. And then we include aspects of what you've already got within the organization. And, in this case, we moved on to conversational capacity, managing performance, leading people through change. So we can do a huge mix of things and log these components so that, they become specific and people understand how to use them within the organization in the context of the organization. And I believe that experience is really mixed together very, very well. So, you might be going, well, okay, so what do people say about these experiences? One thing that I'm always interested in hearing, from people who've been on any of the trainings is what do they experience? What do people do? What do people think? How do people feel about these experiences? Because, one thing, employees all have in common is that we're all human beings. That's no big surprise. And we all go through experiences. So, what happens, in our thoughts and the way we think about experiences, you have feelings about an experience. And what happens when you go through that experience and that feeling absolutely, influences and impacts what you do. So, for example, right now you've got thoughts, you've got feelings about the experience you may or may not be having on this session. And again, that one's either going to decide whether I switch off and go do something else or I carry on listening. But again, it's based on the experience that you're having. And, as I said, as human beings, we all experience these things, but these experiences, and sometimes we found that they can be true experiences. Sometimes they're experiences that we make up in our own minds. But these are the ones that tend to either, go back and get people excited about it or not. Because again, you've been on a training or someone's come back into your organization that's been on a training and goes, and I'm just going to pick on someone, Angelo, for example. Angelo, I've just come back from this training and it was a waste of time. And then, a couple of weeks later, the organization says, Angelo, we got a training for you. Don't you want to go on it? And Angelo's going like, well, if it was a waste of time for Roberto and he thought it was not very good, why do I really want to go on it? And another example of that, because that happened just the other night. I made some food and I tried something very different. And it turned out to be incredibly spicy, hot, but way over the top. And I bit into this and it was like, you should have seen my face. And Kathy, my wife, looked at me and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I thought, "Oh, that was disgusting." And I thought I'd made something quite good. And then I turned around and, not knowingly, I said to her, "Do you want to try it?" And she was like, why do you want me to try something that you've said is disgusting? And that's the way people are. So, how people go back into an organization and either report back and say, "Yeah, it was great," or say, "Look, it wasn't that great," based on the experience, is how people are going to react to it. So, that's something just to keep in mind, that, what people say, what people do, what people think really results and comes around from how people feel in that. and and based, because it's on that, so what is really important for us is also, is to connect and to make sure that, the right things are going on. So, the way we make sure the right things are happening is right from the beginning, right till the end. We make sure that people are sharing about how things are going along the way, along with different examples, and you've seen some of the learning journeys here and parts of them, but again, it's about asking people how every week, how every step of the journey was, because, once you're able to adjust that, you can then go, "Okay, well, it's not quite on track. Let's adjust it so that we get the exact specific results that we want." And that's certainly, part of an important one. And, again, we talked about outcomes, and, it's an important one, because if it wasn't for outcomes, we're all in an organization, we're all here to produce outcomes. Without outcomes, there is nothing. So what are outcomes? As a business, we need outcomes. Jobs, we need to demonstrate, our outcomes, and no different. When it comes to learning and development, we need to show the effectiveness. And if we're not going to convince and demonstrate, the senior leaders, the managers, the executives, that, this makes sense and it's working, then it becomes very difficult. But by demonstrating positive results, responses, behavior changes, and naturally behavior changes, we talk about actions in there. So, again, slightly busy slide, but there are different types of engagement. And, one of the things that we are able to demonstrate through these learning journeys is, if I feel that, you know, I always feel I'm having to prove the effectiveness of learning journeys and development to many, many clients, because a lot of people go, "Yeah, we love it, but, the right kind of budget, the support, not always easy to find." And I fully appreciate it. So, we're always looking at ways of, okay, how can we demonstrate with some results that this really works? It really produces what we're trying to achieve. And the one thing, and again, it's an important one, is we need to demonstrate in a way that it impacts over time. And, very seldom are you going to find things that impact, uh, but if it's done on a one-off basis. So, as we train, and again, as it has time to turn this around and demonstrate different things, there's various ways to do it. And you can use any one of these levels, from a very basic region. You can start off, did someone actually like it? Did they like it or not? But then all the way up to really at the top, where you can say, well, did it create change? Did it maximize? And we can measure ROI impact on it. Because at the end of the day, most investments, if you're going to go out and buy a company or launch a new product, what's one of the things you're going to be asking the team? Well, what's the ROI? I'm investing this kind of cash. Well, what am I going to get for my return? Or should we be investing it in something else? That's a normal business decision that we have to make. So absolutely, we got to look at that. And it's not just, again, um, the bottom there, did I like it? Did we get lots of smiles and laughs? Did we have some fun? But it's really about, did we see the impacts in there? Because without the outcomes, without the impacts, then really all of it is not, is not done in the right way in there. And just a side one. I read this book. I know it's been around for a while, but I read this book, and it's telling training stories, and it was a great book. And I found one of the chapters in there, uh, and what they explained is they kind of look at and understand, what did my team get out of this training, and it's also called success based methods. And there's many different ideas in this book on programs and how to measure the impacts of the training and development activities. And eventually you find a few that suit you. And I know Blanchard, for example, send a lot of their people to Robert Birkenhoff, because he's got several different trainings, and they get trained up and they bring that sort of stuff back into us. And that's how we help creating the ROIs, creating the key measurements, that get you to where you want to get to, and make sure you're there. And you know, again, quite quickly, how do we get started in there? And it's either, identifying leadership skills that are necessary, for the success of your organization, or it might be, auditing, current leadership curriculums, and you might or might not have one. Or it's how do you go about building and acquiring the missing modules, how to launch, how to measure, or, it could also be, what I've found over time is that when we're teaching the skills that really matter, then we have to be much more focused on success. And then I'm going to open it up in terms of the Q&A in just a quick second. And I just to come back to the presentation in there, I've shared a lot of information with you, but just to go back to the beginning, the three big strategies that we talked about. The first one is the degree to which we can explain and defend to senior leaders to understand the interaction between, as we said, strategic leadership, operational leadership, and again, operational leadership, how it specifically impacts, the organization's success through the employees, as well as through the relationships to our customers. And that's where all of the cash comes from. And this is, critical part of the foundation for leading, for the leadership, learning, and development activities. The second one I want you to take away is that, as migration of technology started, and you just got to think back the last 12 months. If I had said to you guys, let's jump on a Zoom meeting, 18 months ago, most of you would have gone, you're absolutely crazy. Come see us face to face. Otherwise, we can't talk. And that has absolutely changed. So as technology has changed, I'm going to say embrace the technology, because the technology is out there to help us. And that's really, really important that we've utilized technology in these learning journeys. And, we're all different. We all like different things, but we got to take those into account, and importantly, when you can make sure, and this is the last one, when you can make sure, is to measure every step, measure every impact along the way, so that, you don't do something and then you find out and get surprised. I mean, no way would you launch a new product or service and not weekly, daily, or monthly be checking in on the sales of it. You're just not going to do that, because the moment you don't check in on it, well, you don't know what happens. If you do check in on it, you give it the importance, and you can create any differences in there if something needs to change and adjust. So, those are the big three strategies that I just quickly wanted to have a chat with you and talk to you about, because they really have the biggest impact on your training euros, your training investment in there. And yeah, and I did share certainly a lot of information. So I quickly want to just open up a poll for you. And I just want to launch this poll. Yep, you should have a poll on there. And, it's to try and wrap it up a little bit and give you time for a Q&A. But, as always, I always say, well, how can we help you going forward? And I know we've shared a lot of information in there. So, it could be, as I said, we've got the white papers, the research behind the leadership profit chain. If you want to see that, happily share it to you. Go ahead, click on that one. You can click on as many as you want. It's not only one, but then don't forget to hit submit. You want invitations to some upcoming events. Absolutely. If you want us to, sit with you, have a quick look at some of the skills or the leadership skills that might be missing in there. Look at your curriculum. And also, lastly, if you want access to one of the learning journeys, happily share those with you. So, if you haven't already hit yes, then go ahead, hit yes. I'll quickly end the poll and quickly share that with you. So you can see a lot of people are interested in coming back to some of the other events. And then we've got equal people looking for research, equal people looking for access to some of the learning journeys. And for those who have done that, I will be in contact with you. I just need a couple of quick details so I can set you up on the system, and you can, certainly have a look. So I will reach out to you individually. If you don't receive an email because maybe technology for whatever reason doesn't work, if I don't reach out with you within the next 48 hours, please drop me an email. Just say, hey, you promised me the demo, and let's have that quick chat so I can get you in on there. And, while we're talking about it, if, you're thinking, going, oh, I actually wanted the demo, but I didn't click that, then just drop it into the chat box, or any of the other ones will happily make sure that we connect and get together in on that one also. So those are some of the things I wanted to have a chat about. And, again, any questions, we're going to open it up to the Q&A. So I would really, really like to hear your questions, your thoughts, your concerns. And in this case, I'm going to quickly stop sharing. Yep, hopefully I've stopped sharing the poll also. Is that in the way? Share results. No, I think the poll should be gone. Is the poll gone? If you can see the poll, just give me a thumbs up and then I'll try to get rid of the poll. Because I'm hoping you can see me on a bigger screen. Perfect. And this is really opening it up to Q&A. So would love to hear your questions, your thoughts, your concerns. Yep, Jürgen. Likewise, I'm fully looking forward to. It's going to be absolutely fun. We're gonna have some fun doing it. But no, any questions, any thoughts from anyone? And let me quickly check if I need to possibly unmute everyone. And where's my participant slide? Has disappeared. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, if you do have a question, either drop it into the chat box or unmute yourself. I would love to absolutely, answer any questions. I see in the meantime, we had some people who joined us. Marco, welcome. Polly, thanks for joining us. It must be a crazy time early in the US. And we've also got Roman joining us. No, thank you to everyone for joining us. But no, absolutely. Got Kai on the call. It's really good to see most people. But no, I would like to open it up to any sort of Q&A. Please unmute yourself, drop your question into the chat box, whatever you prefer. I'm absolutely comfortable with taking questions in both ways. I'm just scrolling down to see if there's any questions that have come in there yet. No questions in there, but if you do have a question, please unmute yourself. Would love to answer your questions that you might have. And again, just while you're typing those in, if you're a person like me who tends to forget things and I go, oh man, I wish I had asked that question, I've forgotten about it. Don't feel bad. If you're like me, then by all means, drop me an email, drop me something in the course of the next couple of days, give me a ring and say, hey, I forgot to ask you this question and let me help you. And that happily do that because I need to digest most things. I'm not that fast off the block. But, I do want to open up to any Q&A. So this is your time. I'm here as long as you guys have questions. So any questions, please, let me ask. I would love to answer any of those questions. So while I ask that of you, I'm going to have a quick sip. Because I do realize this session was not as interactive as some of the other ones were. A lot of information I've shared with you. And at times can be very quick. Gurav, I see we've also got you on the call. I missed you earlier, but it's great to have you on.
No, I'm sorry. So I joined late. I'm sorry for that. Roberto, please continue.
No.
I've been listening to you. Yeah.
No problems for joining late. It's great that you
Thank
can
you.
be on, and thank you for joining us from India. So we got a really nice audience today. But no, any questions that you might have, if you don't have any questions, then that really ends today's session. I'm just having a look. Khan says, yeah, very useful as always. No questions at the moment. See you next time. Khan, definitely. No, thank you for joining us from Turkey. But, if there are no questions, then that really ends today's session. I'll make sure you get a copy of the slides, copy of the recording, as well as the resources that you asked for. If you asked for a demo version, I will reach out to you. If I don't reach out to you in the next 48 hours, please reach out to me so that I can make sure and get you set up on that. Because sometimes technology, as we know, doesn't always work. That's my backup plan. But I really am here to get you the resources you want. So in that case, I can only say thank you to everyone. Thank you for joining. And, I've appreciated your time. Hopefully you've gotten some value out of it. If you got some value out of it, or maybe just to make myself feel good, give me a thumbs up or, just yep, thank you. No, at least I know you got some value. I feel much better, but thank you. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed connecting with you, but thank you so much to everyone. I wish you guys a wonderful, wonderful day. Can't wait to see you all on the next session. And yeah, have a wonderful day. Have a good rest of the week. Enjoy. And yeah, looking forward to connecting again. Cheers, guys. Thanks to everyone. Hi, Polly. How are you?